Have you ever heard anyone say that God will not allow you to suffer more than you can bear, or that God will not put on you more than you can bear? I hear that. I hear it often at the funeral home. When someone has died, people are grieving. They'll say, well, the Bible says God won't put on you more than you can bear, or God won't let you suffer more than you can bear. I want us to look at just for a few minutes what the Bible says about that. That idea that God won't let us suffer more than we can bear is taken from 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul is writing to the Corinthian church, and he's trying to encourage them to stay away from sin. And he's trying to show them ways out of sin. And in the first part of chapter 10 in 1 Corinthians, Paul gives some examples. All the nation of Israel, as they came out of Egypt and they were being led in the desert. And Paul uses the example of them falling into idolatry, of them falling into sexual immorality, of them testing the Lord and grumbling and complaining against the Lord. And then in 1 Corinthians 10:11, Paul says this: these things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the fulfillment of the ages has come. So if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall, which is good advice. Because whenever you get to the place, whenever any of us get to the place that we think we've got it made and that we're safe, we're not going to commit any particular sin, and that you've kind of overcome a sin, be careful if you think you're standing firm that you don't fall. And then in verse 13, Paul says, no temptation has seized you except what is common to man, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. Paul here is talking about temptation. He's talking about not giving in to temptation and committing the sin. And Paul says, no temptation has come upon any of us that's beyond what is humanly able to bear, and that God will provide a way out of that temptation, because God is faithful. He won't let us be tempted to sin beyond what we can bear. And he will provide a way out so that we can stand up under the temptation. So where does the idea that God's not going to let us suffer in any way come from? I have no idea. Paul is talking about temptation here. As a matter of fact, in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul says this, 2 Corinthians 1, and beginning with verse 8, Paul again writing to the Corinthian church, and this time he's explaining to them why he didn't come visit them when he said he would. And the fact is, he was having a lot of persecution where he was in the province of Asia. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8, he says, we don't want you to be uninformed, brothers, about the hardships we suffered in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired even of life. Indeed, in our hearts, we felt the sentence of death. But this happened so that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. Friends, we can't expect God to keep bad things from happening to us. We can't expect God to keep bad things happening to us that is beyond our ability to endure. Paul said he had hardships beyond his ability to endure. Indeed, he despaired even of life. But he said the reason that those bad things happened to him is because he was able to learn not to depend on himself, but to depend on God. And if God lets us go through life and keeping hardships from coming on us beyond what we can endure, we're going to be thinking that we're able to make it through life on our own. When indeed we need to learn to rely on God. So embrace it when hard times come. Embrace it when hard times come beyond our ability to endure, because it forces us to rely on God.